at the Kenyan situation and when you look at the Kenyan market, in terms of creating and ensuring that all electrical equipment in Kenya are energy efficient, how are we doing?
Well, we are not doing too badly because we do have a regulation when it comes to energy efficiency. We have been the champion of what we call the Energy Management Awards, working with Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We're on an annual basis, but this on a voluntary basis. Industries then compete in various segments and categories to be able to demonstrate the energy efficiency that they've been able to achieve. But now we are now going to make that now a voluntary commitment, not from a voluntary commitment to a regulatory commitment going forward, where we will then be requiring energy efficiency standards. We've also been, Kenya has been a pioneer because we have our solar water heating regulations, which require all public institutions, also apartments and high-rise buildings, to have solar water heating. So we have been at the forefront of matters energy efficiency, particularly when it comes to heating. We also approve energy efficient appliances. When you talk to the issue of air conditioners and importation of air conditioners, for instance, we set the standard and the benchmark, working with Kentrade. And also when it comes to the issues of performance and labeling, we have performance and labeling guidelines. We are now developing into a regulation. When you go to your supermarket, you see your fridges, you see your appliances with a 5-star rating, between 1 to 5, when it comes to energy efficiency. And this is for all appliances that are imported to the country. And we're able then now to work with consumers to get them to understand the issues of energy efficiency, because sometimes, as I said, cheap can be expensive in the long term.
And when you look at in terms of our energy efficiency compliance, what level are we talking about?
In terms of energy efficiency, there's a big question. Around when you talk about compliance, is it compliance of our appliances? That we're doing quite well because, as I've said, we have the regulations. But the big issue here is energy efficiency, as I said, end to end. From generation, our generators efficient because we compensate them for their costs when not called operation and maintenance. So if the generators become efficient, then we have a lower tariff for the power that they produce. Then when you talk to energy efficiency for the utilities, both the transmission, in the Kenyan context, KETRACO, the transmission company, or the single buyer, the distribution utility, Kenya Power, when you talk about efficiency, it comes in the issue of losses. Today our losses stand at 22%. The global average is about 7%. 1 percentile is about 1.5 billion Kenya shillings. So you can see really we are leaking a lot when it comes to efficiency of the transmission and distribution. A lot of it is on account of a lack of investment in the infrastructure, both transmission and distribution infrastructure over the long term. But then we need to invest so that then we can make our grids smart, so that then we can make them more efficient and reduce the losses on that front. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the consumer also who has then to be efficient in the appliances that they buy, in the kind of equipment that they then invest in, whether it is an industry or it is a home, or, as I said, in solar water heating, or in your microwave or your fridge. To ensure that also you're able to lower your energy use. And ultimately, when you lower your energy use, then that means also those who are do not have access to energy, then will get the access just by energy efficiency, even before we talk to investment.
So when we talk about energy efficiency, at the domestic level, and I know that's where we also have a challenge. I know there has been concern that there are some countries who have been dumping their energy inefficient appliances into the Kenyan market and into the African market. How badly are we doing?
We are not doing very badly because, as I said, we are the lead agent. We work with Kentrade and KRA in terms of ensuring that the appliances, particularly air conditioners, that are imported into the country are efficient. We give an approval based on the specifications or the rating of the equipment being brought into the country. But I can also say, just to be honest, also sometimes we have a challenge when it comes to enforcement in terms of enforcing those standards at port of entry. And this is one area that we are working with the Revenue Authority and country to ensure that we do not become a dumping ground, because ultimately Sub-Saharan Africa has been a dumping ground for a lot of refurbished, quote-unquote, equipment that is coming out of the global north.
Mm-hmm. If you walk around the streets of Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, and Mombasa, I mean, you see so many shops selling what you'd call prefabs.
Yes, X, this, X
that, X UK, X US, X Japan, X Chinese. And all these, when you look at them, their energy efficiency, these are products that were made in the 1980s, in the 1990s. What are you doing in this front to ensure that we do not become the dumping ground for this equipment?
So what we're doing is ensuring that we then assess type rating, as we call it, of each appliance, to then be able to have it registered on the Kindred portal and registered on the portal to ensure that what comes into the country is energy efficient. But ultimately also the conversation we need to have is a conversation around access, because at the end of the day, when you have just gotten your power connection and you're looking for a fridge, your biggest driver is the cost. So when you see X this, X that, the biggest driver is cost of acquisition. That's what the regular Kenyan will look at. So is there a space to make it better? Yes. But also it is a balance, a delicate balance, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about a challenge in terms of ensuring that there is a compliance in that level, where is the challenge when it comes to ensuring that compliance is there?
No, it's a multi-agency approach because one is having the regulations, putting in place the structures, but more importantly, ensuring that they're enforced. So
we should ensure that the enforcer is enforced.
It is the regulator EPRA, but also working with other government agencies, the Ports Authority, the Revenue Authority, Kentrade, in terms of the single portal that they do operate. So we have done well because we have the regulation in place, we have the infrastructure in place. We are now looking to how do we then enforce.
And how do you do that?
No, as I've said, we are working on a whole of government approach. It is an issue that we are working together with the Revenue Authority, working with the Ports Authority to ensure that this actually happens. And that's exactly the measures that we are putting in place. But I'm not saying that we are doing badly. No. What I'm saying is that we are trying to have a whole of government collaborative approach.
I know manpower has been a challenge.
Yes.
In the past, in ensuring that you have enough inspectors on the ground.
That's correct.
To carry out this work. How are you dealing with that challenge?
No, we are working with the government through the National Treasury in the with the finance bill that was shot down. Government came up with austerity measures. We are working with the government to try and get the National Treasury also to appreciate the opportunity cost to the economy, because we could be saving on manpower and resources, both human and financial resources, but the opportunity cost to the economy is much bigger than the resources that we're asking for.
Mm-hmm. If you had to be given enough manpower in terms of inspectors, how would that number look like?
We've been looking at an establishment as a regulator of about 600 people, but also the financial resources, because at the end of the day, sometimes it is not only about people, but it's also investment in technology, because tech could be able to take us a long way in terms of enforcement and being smart about it, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about 600 people, currently you have, what is the number that you have?
Establishment is, we at 238, last I checked, yeah.
238.
Yeah.
So is this really, how is this then impacting your operations or smooth or operations?
No, being here at COP, and you can see the kind of numbers that you have here, and if you talk to your counterpart regulators, because we do engage, uh, there is a very broad mandate which the regulator needs to cover, which have been captured in the Energy Act 2019 and Petroleum Act 2019. So really, resourcing is a big issue. If we're able to then to be well resourced, then we could be able to devolve our services across all counties and also at the ports of entry, even in the, as you say, in the conversation on importation of energy efficient appliances.
Mhm. Let's now look at energy inefficiency on behalf of the transmitters and generators. You're talking about Kenya Power, and when you look at the inefficiency in terms of infrastructure, I mean they've been having losses of about 22%. I know the conversation is to bring down these to around 15 and then 10,
Yes.
5. How are you working with Kenya Power to ensure this is achieved?
When we did approve a retail tariff in March of 2023 for a 4-year tariff control period, we had a conversation with them and said, look, your losses at the time were standing at 23%. And we had allowed 19.9% to be passed on to consumers. Previously, it was 15%. But we said, look, our role as a regulator is to balance the interests of investors and consumers, and we don't think consumers should be burdened by inefficiencies to a point that is not reasonable. As we said, the global benchmark for transmission and distribution losses at 7%. We were 23% then. What we then approved last year was to set a target to reduce these losses on 1% by 1% on a year-on-year over the 4-year tariff control period. And we started at the 19.9% the first year of the tariff control period. We came down to 18.9% in the second year of the tariff control period, and we'll be coming down to 16.9% at the end of the tariff control period. Mm-hmm. So yes, the target was to get to 15%, but also we recognize that these losses split between technical and commercial. The technical losses require investment. So we need to invest in upgrading the grid so that then you can reduce the losses. Mm-hmm. But where there's a low-hanging fruit is on commercial losses, which basically is theft. That is an area that the utility has really worked hard on, and they are really clamping down on losses when it comes to commercial. Mm-hmm. But on technical, it's an investment issue.
Mm-hmm. It's an investment issue. So what about at the generation point?
Yes, at generation, how we manage that is in operation and maintenance costs. Is to ensure first that the generators are taken out for routine, what is called routine maintenance, to ensure that they're efficient, so that then when they become efficient, then the operation and maintenance costs are lower, and therefore by extension their generation costs become low. So we monitor, we do technical audits of the generators to ensure that they're operating within the plant conditions that have been specified. We also ensure that the operation and maintenance costs are also within reason, so then we have lower generation costs.
Mm-hmm. Let's also talk about the green energy, and I know Kenya, our desire is to transition to 100% green grid by the year 2030. I know now we're doing 98%.
92, about 92% of what we dispatch is green. Mm-hmm. No, this is a very good story because being here in Baku and COP, and when you talk about transition, you're talking about transition on an only 8 percentile to get to 100% transition by 2030, which is the commitment that Kenya has given. Mm-hmm. We're 92%. Take, for instance, Azerbaijan, where we are today. Their mix is 95% gas.
Yeah.
So Kenya, 92% green energy. Azerbaijan, 95% gas. When you talk to the global north, the conversation has been how do we then move or transition from coal, gas, nuclear to renewables? And where on average renewables will account to maybe about 20% at the highest. We're already at 92%. But then you have to balance the issue of the transition with also affordability, because that's a conversation, and as I said, is an issue of access, but also affordability. So if you have resources such as oil and gas or coal, like in the case of South Africa, how do you become competitive as an economy is your cost of power. The day before yesterday, you heard the U.S. President speak, incoming U.S. President speak for about 15 minutes on the cost of energy and how to make America competitive from a manufacturing standpoint is driven by trying to make U.S. the cheapest when it comes to the cost of energy, because when you talk to cost of energy, then will then drive investment and industrialization.
And I know there are a number of green energy projects that are in the pipeline. Which one are these?
Yeah, yes, we have a least cost power development plan, and we have projects that are in the pipeline in the short to medium term. You have Menengai, which is being developed by GDC. You had the president there a couple of weeks ago to commission the 35 megawatts plant being developed by a Chinese company called Kaishan. You have Kengen having all Carrier 7, they want to develop 140 megawatts. You then have a lot of renewable energy projects, wind and solar also in the pipeline. In Limuru, Apecha, you have quite a number of projects actually that are in the pipeline. The challenge has been there's been a moratorium that was put in place by cabinet and then put by parliament, which has been slowing down investment in generation.
And how are you dealing with that moratorium? I know dealing at it from the cabinet level, may be easier than dealing with it, at the legislative level. So how are you ensuring that you're handling?
We've had a conversation with Parliament 2 weeks ago. We were invited as a sector, the ministry and the regulator, to make a presentation to the parliamentary leadership, which we did, and we made our point, and they actually took it very positively and understood the need to lift the moratorium so that we can ensure we have energy security.
How soon is that moratorium likely to be?
It's a parliamentary process. We were hoping like yesterday, but in all indications is that Parliament will be able to lift the moratorium before they go to recess at the end of this month of November.
Very good. Anything else do we need to know before I let you go?
No. I think this is a very interesting conversation at COP. We can see from COP28 and now COP29 issues around commitments and because of the geopolitics that is matters environment and matters energy is really an issue of the commitment from a financing standpoint. Can Sub-Saharan Africa and Kenya, for instance, get the resources to invest in this green transition? Because ultimately, without the resources, all it is structure.
It is structure. Yeah. And when you look at Kenya, I mean, what kind of resources are we talking about in a bid for us to make the whole transition into a green energy?
Well, I don't have a number at the top of my head, but just to take an example, like a truck of the transmission company, the kind of investment that it requires to then build transmission that is required between now and 2040 is a significant investment. And I think the estimation was upwards of $15 billion. So
$15 billion.
So really the question is that how do we attract private capital and private sector participation? Because for us to invest in the infrastructure, we cannot rely on the exchequer. It has to be private capital coming in, and that's why I say that the global north but be able to support us in the global south to invest in the infrastructure.
And I know one of the biggest conversations here is how to enhance climate finance. And I know the developing countries, they've been talking about setting up a facility or ensuring that about $1.3 trillion US, help in climate finance. This, of course, will be a major boost to Kenya's just transition. But in case it delays, what happens?
It's a tough question because even Kenya has been the champion of climate change. Kenya is chairing the African Green Growth Initiative, AGII, which Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary, hosted the day before yesterday. It is one of our options is we need to look within, not within Kenya, but being able to pool resources as a region, the African Union, the East African region, through the East African Power Pool, to then pool resources and then make targeted interventions. Because without the financing, we cannot do everything. But then being able to pull resources together as a region and then identify priority projects and be able to fund those as a region, then that would be the next best thing.
Very good. Anything else?
No, nothing for me. Thank you very much.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Well, we've been talking to Daniel Kipto. He's the Director General at the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, joining us here at the COP29 to help us understand what they are doing as an authority to ensure the green transition happens here in Kenya. And of course, you've heard it from him. 92% of our energy is green, is generated from green sources. And of course, so we're talking about 8 more to go before we make the 100% transition. We are coming to you from the city of Baku in Azerbaijan, the host of COP29. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Enjoy the rest of the program.
Her efforts in promoting gender equality and inclusivity is second to none, and it's very testament in the work that she does and the projects that she's involved in.
Senator Hamida Kibwana, nominated senator for Nairobi. You talk about nominated, there's no difference of nominated and elected when you get to that house. You really have to have a heart to fight all this. You know, you have to have the will and power. See 2/3 tu mutuangalie muingize kitu yoyote ya wanawake ndani so that, you know, we can garner. And to be honest, let me tell you, for me to be nominated, I hold my head high. You know, you take care of yourselves. The other thing, don't rush for, you know, material thing. Our girls nowadays, niko na mbabas. Why would you think that only men can do that? And some of us didn't grow to that. And where can't I take myself now?
At this location,
A ransom?
we can't do this without any violence.
After we're done with him, we can go back to being enemies, but for now, he needs to go, like immediately.
Your father told you very well.
When Alice is back, I expect you to back away from my family for good. Sawa sawa?
Fine, you went after her mother. What do you expect? I went away with your lover, you mean?
How is my daughter?
Sikumpatia Benji.
Can I at least speak to her ukiwa hapa? Nitamweka loudspeaker.
I think Ruth is playing me at the expense of Alice.
Why would I do that? Why?
The climate is changing